get after a little bit. It is the Field of 12 after dark. You know the deal. Oh, we're already sipping. I like it. Clint. Christian Hackenberg.
What is that,
Stoerner.
yo?
We got a little kombucha. You got to keep that gut health in line here. But here we are, powered by Bet
Rivers. Some gut health working all right.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. Find us on the SiriusXM app. Check us out all over social media, YouTube. There's a bunch of cool stuff we're going to get to tonight. If you want some swag, want some merch, just go to fieldof68.shop. With that said, we got a lot to talk about tonight, fellas. Want to hear your thoughts, and anybody on social media, let us know your thoughts, because it's about to be debate time. The playoff, the CFP, the meetings happen this week. I know on behalf of the Pac-12, we present on Thursday as a conference. Every conference gets to present. And then next week, we'll see those first rankings. So let the debates begin all over social media. And today we hope to talk about a bunch of great things that I think will impact those debates. Ohio State, upset alert. Happy Valley. Hack, of course, we're going to get your opinion on that. Clemson, that is a debate on their bye week. Who's going to be the guy, right? Is it Cade Klubnik, the 5-star recruiter, or DJ Uiagalelei, the other 5-star recruit? They got a lot of talent there. We'll see how that thing shakes out. And then the Pac-12. I'm going to go hard on the Pac-12 and the college football playoff. A lot to talk about in that regard, as my 7-year-old, just showed up in the room with the production assistant. So with that said, fellas, I want to toast tonight to something that I thought about when I saw Hack, when I first joined this party. I want to toast to the moment in college football that kind of captured us at any moment in your life. It could be this year. It could be when you were a kid. I'm going to start first because as a Pitt guy, it pains me to say it, but I went to Happy Valley and I saw the Desert Swarm of Arizona go out there, and LeVar Arrington and Brandon Short, it was that defense. LeVar gets hurt. He goes into the locker room. The oxygen gets sucked out of the stadium. And then around the third quarter, he just starts walking down that tunnel, and only a few people could see him. And then it got louder and louder and louder and louder. And I'm like 13, and I'm like, holy, this 100 whatever thousand at the time. This is like 1994 or something like that. And that's when I was like, I need a fix. This is my thing. So I'm going to toast that moment, which led us to here 30 some years later, or whatever it's been.
I'm going to go next because I know my man Hack needs a few more minutes to put his
you saw me processing?
Put his together. Yeah. But I see it. I can read the room. Yogi, by the way, when you keep bringing up these kind of cheers, you're going to have to shoot me a text or something beforehand.
I know.
I've been hit a few times. I ain't the sharpest tool in the shed. Hell, I got but I got one. This is easy for me, man. I went to a University of Texas game, and I'll be honest with you, I completely forgot about this until you just asked this question. Like it blanked in my mind. I've been to a couple of Texas games with my wife, but I went to a University of Texas game. They were recruiting my tight end at the time here in Baytown, Texas. A kid named Chad Irwin was one of the highest ranked tight ends coming out. And Ricky Run was at the University of Texas, Ricky Williams. And I don't remember much of the details. I remember the game. He was an absolute monster, and you realize this dude's fixing to set records, and you could feel the momentum in the stadium and all that jive that comes with it. But I remember one of the coolest things ever, and this is really cool today because today it's a new trend. Everybody making their own T-shirt, right? This was the first time that I remember a T-shirt going what we call today viral. It was literally just a silhouette of Ricky running the rock, and the only way you knew it was Rick was he had them dreads hanging out of the back, like out of his helmet. And I remember that shirt just going batshit crazy after that. And it was one of those like, wow. Little did I know, 25 years, 30 years later, whatever it is, we'd be able to make our own T-shirts and sell them online and make money doing it. But that was the moment for me when I realized how big college football was, how cool college football was, how big college football in the state of Texas was. At that point, I'd never left the state of Texas. Here's to Ricky Williams. Run, Ricky, run, baby.
That's awesome, man.
Literally, Yo, I forgot about that experience until you said that, and I started racking my brain.
All right, Hack, what you got?
Which is dangerous, by the way.
So this is when we fell in love with college football, right, Yo?
Yeah, just a moment that captured
something like that.
Like, it's a moment where you're like, whoa, this thing's pretty rad.
Yeah. That's tough. I had a few. Fortunately, I've been around football a lot. Like my first game, I was really young, went to Penn State games. And then my dad played at Virginia. So when we moved back to the Charlottesville area, we had season tickets, been to a lot of Virginia games. But I will say this goes back to probably I was seven or eight. I went to a Penn State game versus Temple with my grandfather and my dad. And my agent, who ended up being my agent now, but was my dad's best friend since sixth grade, played at Penn State. We met him at a tailgate, chugging a football around, looked at him after everything and said, "Hey man, I'm going to play here one day." He laughed at me. And now we kind of busted each other's balls about it since I ended up playing at Penn State. And then he ended up being my agent. So it was like one of those cool full circle moments. But that's kind of where I realized it. And then, everything else kind of fell in place with it. But that was one of the cool ones for me.
Wow. I love that. I love those memories. The reason I bring it up is because, like, I don't know if you guys feel this, but like we're entering a month stretch after this weekend where it's going to be on and it's going to be picking apart every little thing. And I just think it's important to start shows on the idea of like, do we still love this game? Like, because you're going to feel it. We're going to, conferences and leagues and teams, and we're going to nitpick and who's good, who's worse. And a lot of times I think it's about like who's worse. I think that kind of comes to the surface. And I think it's important just to kind of remember that we're here. It was 2 years ago. We were lucky we even had games. So just wanted to start there tonight. So thanks for doing that. Surprised you. It's kind of my thing now, Clint. I just kind of throw something out there randomly, but I'll give you a heads up next time. So with that, Clint, I want to start with you. Ohio State has been, I think, arguably the most consistent team when you just look at point differential throughout the season. Where do we net out on them? Because they also consistently haven't played anybody who's been ranked. What do you think?
Yeah, look, I'll be loud and clear. I think Ohio State is the top four football team. They should be ranked in the top four in America right now. But as we discuss the top teams in the country, and as we get closer to the college football playoff, there's one thing about Ohio State that sticks out like a sore thumb, and that's their schedule. I hate that everybody's quick to go, yeah, but that point differential. Yeah, but boy, these stats. Yeah, but man, this or that. No, man, you ain't played nobody. Look, you're a good football team. Everybody understands that. You're one of the top football teams in the country year in, year out. Everybody understands that. But we need to have a conversation about what does it mean that they are not going to play a team with a winning record at this point in time. They're not going to play a team with a winning record until week 8. Is it week 8 or week 9, actually? What is this, week 8? So it's week 8. They're going to play a team with a winning record. That's got to mean something. I'm not saying it pushes them outside of the top 10. I'm saying it creates a lot of doubt in my mind as to who exactly Ohio State is.
Clint,
go ahead.
Yeah, what I'll say when I jump in on this, though, is that you're talking about Ohio State now. There's guys on that roster who played 3-4 years of football. That program's won against anybody for the past 15 years, right? So I don't think you can really take the strength of schedule necessarily this year into account. Like, yeah, that is what it is. But at the end of the day, Ohio State will come out and handle business, and they've proven that over 3 coaching staffs. And as long as we can remember, right? I think the last time they were not ranked in the top 25 was like in 2011 or something, or 2008, when they had a interim head coach between Tressel and Urban. So to me, like the argument of strength of schedule, yeah, it is what it is, but they've been handling business this year with the strength of schedule. And again, it's not a program who's just emerged in that realm of talk or royalty in college football. Like these guys have proven it. And there's guys on this roster that have been there for a while when they have played in those games too. So I see what you're saying, but I also think that it's a little bit of a different animal than most situations of somebody who's like, strength of schedule this, strength of schedule that. I think it's something that's ingrained in that program. They're ready to play no matter what.
Yeah. Look, you can't argue with the history, but I look at this thing from year to year. And if we're going to sit there and talk about, hey man, does an undefeated TCU, do they get into college football playoffs? Hey man, them Pac-12 teams, if they run the table or if they do this, do they get in the playoffs? Then we got to look at strength of schedule though. We can't sit there and look at the Big 12 and go, Big 12 sucks, relevant, man.
Though, for the past like 15 years?
That ain't got nothing to do with this year.
Have they been consistent though?
No.
You can't tell me that consistency doesn't play a little bit of a factor in this.
Sure. Yeah. Look, I'm not. It does. I'm not. That can play a factor, but we still got to be able to have a conversation about the strength of schedule and understand that. Like, I'm gonna be honest with you. I've purposely gone back and watched Ohio State ball games. And I'm not sure that when I've heard I've been beat over the head with, yeah, but the eye test. Yeah, but the eye test. Really? The eye test at Ohio State is that convincing right now. You watch the Michigan State game, and I'm picking one where old boy threw 5 touchdowns, and they actually look pretty good. The Michigan State game, the Notre Dame game, and you look at the Iowa game, and the eye test tells you, yeah, don't worry about the strength of schedule, man. Don't worry about that. That's a top 4 football team. I don't agree with that. I don't agree. I'm not as before. I just sat there and let it be like, oh, it's Ohio State, man. You must be right. Boy, them stats are big, man. You must be right. Yeah. I went back and watched 2 complete ball games within the last 48 hours, and I don't see it. I watched C.J. Stroud throw for 100 yards and 2 extra touchdowns at the end of that ball game after they were up 40-10. Y'all want to hit me? You want to hit me in the face with stats? Nah, man. I just, again, they're a top 4 football team, but I'm not as susceptible to, hey, man, watch the tape. They passed the eye test as I was a week ago.
So I want to bring this point up because I think this is a fascinating conversation. Again, we're at least for us 3. This is the last time we'll be together until a ranking comes out in the CFP. And I don't know if you guys have done the mock exercise. Have you gone to like Dallas? They'll take journalists and broadcasters down there. If not, I'd highly recommend it. But you go and you like go through the mock. And the year I got to be Rob Mullins, who was the chair at the time. So you go through, they pick a year, and then you go through the whole system. Well, very clearly they say it's supposed to just be about the season that we're talking about. So I say that because we all know that like how it's I don't want to say it's impossible. It's really hard to ignore what Hack's point is, like the history of it. So if we're going to take it into context, I think it's fair to point out like last year they lost to Michigan 42-27, who got rolled in the playoff. So I think there is something to the context of like, do we want to go historicals? Do we want to go back 15 years? Do we want to go back a calendar year to last year's team, to this year's team? Do we want to just pick the 4 best? Because I think it's going to be a fascinating dialogue where I sit if Oregon runs the table in that regard of should they have scheduled Western Michigan in that week 1 game? Like I think all these nuanced things, if it gets tight at the end, are worthy of a discussion.
Yeah, look, I'll tell you this, guys. I think I'll tell you guys how to do your job or what you should think. But like, I look at teams like Georgia, and I don't go, "Oh yeah, man, shit, man, they've been crushing folks." We could very easily say that. I mean, the last 2 years, there's nobody been more dominant in the college football game over the last 2 years. But the reality of it is we should look at these 5 or 6 or 7 teams that are in it year in, year out, that have the logo on the side of the helmet that garners the extra respect, and go, is Alabama's defense really as good as we think? They're more vulnerable on offense. Is Alabama's defense as good? Is the receiving core as good? Anybody can sit there and go, Bryce Young is badass. Man, they've won X number of games straight, right? Anybody can sit there and look at Stroud's numbers and go, man, Stroud's crushing it, man. This offense is unstoppable, man. I mean, anybody can look at Georgia after week 1 and they've won 49-3 and go, boy, they're going to replace all those 8 guys that got drafted last year. No, man. It's like, I feel like it's my job to look at that through a little bit more trained eye and go, what are the fallacies of it? What might be the problem with each one of these absolute powerhouses that could get exposed throughout the year in the college football playoffs? So I just find that a little bit more fascinating, I guess, Hack.
Listen, I agree with you. And I think the one thing, to your point, though, the one thing that I've looked at with this Ohio State team is defensively, I thought they struggled last year. And then I thought they also struggled to run the football last year, whether that was the ability to the inability of calling it and game planning it and making it a priority, or if they just couldn't do it. I think this year they have. And to your point about the Iowa game, they were up 40-10 against a team that no matter who they played, they've only given up 54 points in the entire season up into that point. So to me, for Ohio State to be able to show different ways to be able to win games, and again, taking the historical data into it, I think if they can run the football with a threat, their defense plays better than they did last year, and with the offensive firepower they have that's matured, we will, like, I agree with you. I think we need to wait until this week. But if they handle business against a good Penn State team this week the way that I think they can, then to me, all the strength of schedule stuff needs to go out the window. But when I look at it, to your point, Clint, because I don't like to just look at it by stats. And honestly, like CJ Stroud for me has great. He's been playing good. I know that Ohio State guys are going to get their stats. I said that when we talked about this with Desmond. I said Ohio State guys are going to get their stats. You could play Kyle McCord. He's going to light it up for 400 yards. It's just the system, right?
Hey, I stole that from you, by the way, Hack. I stole that. Ohio State's a plug and play. I've used that a time or two in Houston on the radio. Just in case you wondered.
Though. No, I appreciate it, but it is though, right? So my point being is I think that they've improved in areas that they lacked in last year. And for me, watching it, they haven't had the opportunity to play a opponent where all of those things had to necessarily click all at once, right? Not go sit there and blame anybody for them not doing it up until this point, but I'm just curious to see when they're forced to have to do those things, what happens. And to me, I think that they're more tooled to do it this year than they have in the past 5 or 6 years.
I'll say this. We're going to keep it moving in a second. But if you look at current top 10 in the AP, no one has had to put a string of wins together except one team. Like, beat Bama, amazing. UT Martin. Come on. Right? Like, you can go up and down everybody but TCU. And that's why I'm fascinated what's going to happen Tuesday. Because if TCU is able to remain unblemished, right? I think they have K-State this weekend, right? If they're able to remain unblemished, their blind resume is dramatically better than everybody's. Like, dramatically better than everybody's. And I'll be curious to see what the committee does. And I think this first release of the polls will say, hey, we kind of lean into some of those historicals and those powerhouses with those logos, or it's about this season. And that's why I think it's worth dialogue for us, because I'd imagine they'd beat it up like crazy. Because if it was anybody else who had those wins, those ranked wins in a row, it'd be a no-brainer. It'd be a no-brainer. And my gut is that TCU is not going to be the number one team in America come ranking times next Tuesday, even if they win this weekend. And I also think they're the most deserving today, based on what we've seen this season. Because I think it is. I understand the context of what they've done. I get that, and we respect it. And I think we'd be foolish to say it doesn't play a part in it. But I'm telling you, from being around, like, in these conversations with the committee, they only talk about what is supposed to be this year. So then you ask yourself, all right, well, what seeps in? What seeps
Yogi,
in? And that's where I struggle. Okay.
Let me ask you this. What if Clemson runs the table, TCU runs the table, Ohio State runs the table? Which two are getting in? Let's just assume that two SEC teams are getting in.
Well, this is where, like, I get really conflicted, because I think, like, and I've had this conversation in this setting with the committee before. I just think, like, if you win, I'll say this: when I was coaching at SC, to go undefeated was so much harder than it ever looked like from the outside in college football. When you're the age we know of college players and the challenges of week to week, like, I just think if you win all your games, it's hard for me to be like, nah, you're not in. I don't care about the SEC and two teams and the elitists and all that stuff. Like, if you beat who's in front of you, especially if it's like 9 conference games, like the Big 12 and the Pac-12 easily have the most challenging championship games, because they're playing 1v2. They're not playing division versus division. So I would kick out whoever didn't win the SEC title and say, sorry, bro, like, you got to win your games. I just don't feel like, as an athlete, if someone said you did everything you could, but you can't go compete and you're a Power 5 school, Power 5 league, I would lose my mind on that. And, like, what else could you ask a player to do? You know, like,
no, it's fair enough.
Got to bring
it.
I
think you could also make another argument too, if a one-loss Oregon to only Georgia. So you could technically end up in that scenario where you have a one-loss Oregon to only Georgia. You have an undefeated TCU, you have an undefeated Clemson, and an undefeated Ohio State out of the Big Ten.
Yeah, and that goes to and like, I'll be making that argument. Like, I'm happy to present it here.
Yeah.
But if you look at, like, again, what is the CFP tasked to do? They would say 4 best. Okay, and we would say, well, what does that mean? Is it 4 best bodies of work? Is the entirety of the season? Like, should a team be penalized for playing the defending champs in the opener? Should they have played Western Michigan? I don't mean to pick on Western Michigan, but like, should they just play like Tennessee Martin? Like, should they just play whatever, like one of those teams? And, you know, thankfully the playoff is going to expand, but I'll be fascinated to see how that's valued
Yeah.
with the people in the room, with a new room this year and the dynamics.
Save your Oregon argument. Save your Oregon argument, though. I want to hear that for later.
It's such a lame ass response, though, Yogi. You know what I mean? Not from you. I'm talking about from that's such a lame ass response to say, "Oh, we're tasked to give you the best 4." I mean, okay. Yeah. So what if you look up in a team that is really one of the top 4 has 2 losses this year? I mean, is the second loss worse than the first loss? Like if a team loses 1 game throughout the year, and Ohio State lost to a 6-6 Virginia Tech football team at their place, I believe it was the first year of the college football playoff. They ended up going on and winning the national championship. So nobody wants to have the conversation of like, wait a minute, you let a team that got beat by a 500 football team in their own backyard, you let them in? Like, okay, that sounds good. Well, what if somebody loses to 2 teams that are top 5 football teams? Is the second loss worse than that? The fact that somebody lost to a 6-6 football team? Like, what are we talking about here? To me, it's just such a lame, like the best 4. No, man. I mean, there's too much of that. Yeah. The logo means this, and people say what they want to. The power of the logo and the power of eyeballs on the college football playoffs is going to be more with the bigger logos in it. You can't. Nobody's going to convince me that that's not an issue as well. So I hate the whole 4 best. I mean,
bro. You're preaching to the choir. I mean, let's just talk about for a second week 11. Okay, week 11 for Alabama. I'm just going to pull it up. I don't even know who it is yet. Austin P, I think is how you pronounce it. All right, let's talk week 11, Utah, Oregon. Like, I just think the inequities in college football remain dramatic, right? Whether it's 8 versus 9 conference games, how the conference title is shaped up, like to the point of like, hey, the SEC has done such a nice job that you can't criticize them winning or being elite. But man, what a nice job of marketing that thing and only having 8 conference games and never having to play 2 tough games in a row. And when was the last time you saw an SEC team play legit back-to-backs? When was the last time Georgia played Bama in the regular season non-2020? I'll tell you, a decade ago. Like, so it'll be amazing to watch how it shakes out. So another thing that'll be amazing to watch how it shakes out. We'll get back to. Let's talk about the Big Ten here for a second. We'll finish. Is Michigan? Like, Michigan seems like they're in control. JJ McCarthy playing at high level. Clearly, them and Ohio State are in a clash. Before we move on to Clemson, because we're going to get there, just real quick for you guys, how do you feel about Michigan and the defending champs in that league? We just talked to Ohio State. Where do you net out between the two? Hack, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, Michigan's done a great job of, I think, not only they've done a great job of building on what they did last year foundationally. They're a really physical football team, old school. I love watching their offensive line play. And I think from the defensive side of the ball, they're approaching it more as a by unit as opposed to by name on the back of the jersey, where they had Aiden Hutchinson, David Ajabo, and a few other guys there that all got drafted. Their defense is as productive, if not more productive, I think, statistically at this point in the season than they were last year. So really good football team. And I think JJ, he hasn't been asked to do much at this point in time. I think obviously that's when that does come up, that's going to be when Harbaugh rolled the dice, because I think he knew what he was going to get out of Cade McNamara, just because of what they went through last year. But he doesn't necessarily know what he's going to get out of JJ from full 4 quarters with the press on him and kind of in tight holes, and you're in 3rd and 15 down by 10 in the horseshoe. Like, you don't really know how he's going to react in those situations, but at the end of the day, that's something he's going to have to live and die with. So we're going to have to find out when those situations come out, how he does react. But at the end of the day, it's JJ McCarthy's show, so we'll see. But I really, really like the way this Michigan team's built.
Yeah, I think regardless, I think we're all probably on the same page. Like,
yeah,
one team comes out of the Big Ten.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if we're approaching this thing the right way, I think it's a no-brainer, right? And look, the thing with Michigan is the elephant in the room is what Hack was just talking about. I mean, look, Michigan's got a great football team. They're doing a lot of good things, but ultimately, if the conversation about Michigan and how they fit into a potential college football playoff, that conversation is about one man, and that's JJ McCarthy. And who is he? What is he capable of? When during this season does Harbaugh actually give him the handles to this offense and say, young man, you got to grow up and go win us a ball game. And because it's going to happen in order to maybe even in order to win the Big Ten. I mean, yeah, to win the Big Ten, right? Maybe in order to get past Ohio State, we don't know. Maybe in order to get past Ohio State, J.J. McCarthy's going to have to grow up a little bit, right? But damn sure to be relevant in the college football playoff, J.J. McCarthy's going to have to be not just a guy that can distribute and a game manager. He's going to have to be a game changer. We saw that last year. My knock on Georgia, we hadn't seen old boy do anything but manage a game. I mean, there was games when he had 10 or 11 completions in a ball game. What'd he do in the SEC championship? What'd he do in the college football playoffs? Dude lit it up. It all of a sudden became an explosive offense at Georgia in order to win a title. Can J.J. McCarthy do what he did last year?
Yeah. It's so fun. Like, heck, I remember meeting you back in the day, and JJ, he's an impressive dude. I look forward to that stage for him. What I'd love to see, because now just as a fan of the playoff, like I can't wait to see where they net out if, let's say, Michigan loses to Illinois but beats Ohio State. Imagine Ohio State beats Penn State, loses to Michigan. Like, I kind of hope for a little of that chaos just to see, to really find out what they're thinking in that room. All right, so speaking of the room, the QB room at Clemson. What do you think is going on in the QB room? And what do you think is going on in the locker room? And we're going to hear from somebody on that team here in a few minutes as well. Clint, I'll start with you, man.
Hey, look, my jaw hit the floor when I'm sitting there watching the post game with Dabo Swinney. And when he all of a sudden goes back to, like, unprovoked, goes to DJ as our starter. I'm on record of saying that right now. I cannot believe that even if it's the right decision, I cannot believe that he made that decision on national TV in a moment where emotions are literally as high as they've been probably all year for that program, if we're being honest. I don't know how, as a head coach, you don't watch what the young fella did when he went in there, and not necessarily what he did, because he didn't have to do a whole hell of a lot in terms of something that we can actually lean on to and say, this kid can go out there and do this every Saturday and win ball games. He ran around a little bit, made a couple plays, but we still really don't know a whole lot about who he is. But the way that team responded and the juice that he brought, the energy that he brought, in that moment when their whole season was on the line, to come back from a 2-score deficit, right? Was it 2 or 3? 2-score, right?
Yeah, it was 21-10.
Yeah, to come back from a 2-score deficit and literally the dude owned the moment, man. I'm not saying he balled out. I'm not saying, but the dude was getting up, doing his thing after first downs and bringing the crew with him. I felt like his energy was contagious. And look, I'm going to be honest with you. I think that's what DJ misses. Whether he don't have it or the team just doesn't respond to him that way, to me, that's what DJ is missing. It's not anything tangible. It's what we saw with the young kid when he stepped in there, and that energy in that building went through the roof, and the energy with that roster went through the roof. And then you go, Clemson's a better football team. Clemson's a more talented football team. They all raised their bar, and game was over.
All right, Hack.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Clint, about the emotional side. And then I'll just go there. Like, I think DJ, I don't know if DJ doesn't have it, but up until this point in the season, I think DJ's done it through his play. I think when they needed him, he's been able to make plays. And this week, he just wasn't making the plays. He was turning the football over. And I don't want to give Dabo too much credit there, but I think the shift in personalities for him might have been a reason that he did it. I think ultimately what, in my opinion, and what I've seen from Cade up until this point, and again, I'm not there every day at practice. I don't know what the kid's capable of, right? I don't see what these coaches see. I've only seen what he does on Saturdays. And up until this point, I think their best chance at making a run into the college football playoff is with DJ as their quarterback. Now, again, there's a lot to be unseen with that. Like you said, Yogi, at the beginning of the show, there's a bye week here. There's going to be some things, and there's probably going to be some tough decisions, but I did find it strange that Dabo did jump to that conclusion so quickly after the game. To your point, a lot of emotion. You usually try to give it at least a 24-hour rule, go back and like reflect on it, talk about it as a staff, but he jumped to it. So to me, Yeah, he must have some real conviction in that stance. And at the end of the day, it's going to be real hard for him to backpedal on it at this point in time. Whether that means DJ just rolls out there with a really short leash next in 2 weeks or not, who knows? But I think there's definitely some things to be seen. I think if you're a college football fan, a Clemson fan, you got to really be paying attention to this.
That's a great point, Hack. The point of what is Dabo Swinney and Clemson? What are they up against? Right, you're undefeated. I mean, you're all but in the college football playoffs. And so if you're Dabo Swinney, do you roll the dice on a 5-star that's inexperienced, maybe lacks a little bit of development, definitely mentally lacks a little bit of development, and you don't know how long it's going to take for him to turn the corner and actually win ball games for you by making decisions from the pocket? Do you roll the dice on that guy, or do you roll the dice on the 5-star, former 5-star that if he plays up to his ability, you can play with anybody in the country, right? I mean, that's a tough ass decision for Dabo, because both of them could end up being like just killer bad decisions. I mean, it's a tough one.
Yeah, I'll tell you where my head went, and just to set the record straight for our listeners, bye week they go to Notre Dame. It's been down, we know. Then they don't leave their home stadium. Louisville, Miami, South Carolina, the rivalry game. So to your point, Clint, like the road is there to go down. My first thought when I saw him go in was not the same stage, but was like Tua Jalen. And I'm like, oh, this will be interesting. I wonder if Alabama had another game that year. Let's just say that was week 8. And Tua came in and threw a sweet pass to win the game in that whole shot. Like, who plays the next week? And I think, Hack, it's a brilliant point of like, for the head coach of Clemson to say what he said and drop the jaw of our friend Clint here and many others, including mine, he has to know something. And I don't think he's a platoon guy, but I'm going to be real curious to see how this shakes out, because we all know one thing. We know that the players, especially on offense, they already know.
Yeah.
They already know, because they've seen it in practice. They've seen it in meetings. And I got to imagine Dabo knows, right? Like, he's our guy. So it'll be amazing to see how it shakes out. And if they remain undefeated, because that's their only shot, I think, to get to the playoff. I think we could look at 1 through 10, and I'd love to see Clemson play somebody outside of their league. Would love to see that. We'll obviously get that in the rivalry game, but would love to see it. All right. So with that said, I know we love to see interviews with players. We have that right here. Jeremiah Trotter Jr., the linebacker, East Coast, New Jersey guy. Interview with Greg Waddell. Enjoy.
We are pleased to be joined by Clemson linebacker Jeremiah Trotter. Jeremiah, first of all, thank you for making time. Congrats on the big win over the weekend, and thanks for being here.
Yeah, no problem. I'm glad I was able to do this.
Absolutely. So I want to start. I'm going to go way back here. I'm going to go past even the beginning of this season, but I want to talk about you as a recruit, because you were a very highly regarded player who probably could have gone anywhere in the country to play college football. What drew you to play for the Clemson Tigers?
I definitely say like just the culture that Coach Swinney talked about, and it was shown to me as a recruit. Just like that family atmosphere. He's a God-fearing man. He's a Christian man, and me myself, I'm religious too. So like I really love that about Clemson and how he tried to teach players, just about God and try to lead them down that path. And just overall, just as far as academics and the football and just like the culture, even outside of the football team, that was just something I could see myself really being a part of.
So I got to ask, is Dabo really like what you see is what you get? Because we see the videos of him dancing, him running out of the tunnel and all of that. But then we also know, like, to your point, he's a man of faith. He uses that as a big pitch of the culture of his program. Like, is he pretty straightforward? What we see as fans, is that really who he is?
Yeah. I said that's definitely what you get. What you see is what you get. And going back to your last question about my recruiting, that's another reason why I came to Clemson, because I knew the way he acted in recruiting was the way what I was going to get when I got here. And you don't get that with a lot of coaches across the country. So I really appreciate that.
So let's jump into this game over the weekend. A big win for you guys, obviously, in an undefeated ACC matchup with Syracuse. and you guys come out unscathed. You are now clearly still the top of this conference, but it didn't always feel that easy to anybody at home watching that game. You guys were down a couple scores early. Obviously, there was the big change at quarterback, but when you guys are down 2 scores in that game, and maybe there's just a feeling of tenseness in that stadium, what's going on between the players? Like, are you guys as confident as you are? Are you kind of rallying together? What was it like in that moment?
Definitely, I feel like on the defensive side and on the offensive side, we all rallied together. We all kept that faith and knew we were going to get it together and do what we had to do to win the game. But from the defensive side, because I'm down there, but I could definitely tell like our leaders really stepped up and I just kept everybody's head in the game and just try to take it one drive at a time to try to get the ball back to our offense so they can make some plays.
What's it like when the change at quarterback happens? I mean, that's not a usual thing. DJ's been playing great this year. Obviously, Cade's incredibly talented, but what does that feel like to the team on the sideline? And were you surprised when that played out?
When you saw Cade go out there, definitely was a surprise. But we had confidence in both our quarterbacks, and knew that Coach Sweeney was going to do what had to be done. Like he said, sometimes you have a bad game, but overall the objective is to win. But we still have faith in both DJ and we have faith in Cade, and he shows that he was ready for that moment to step in.
Thanks, Greg. Jeremiah, great stuff. Check out the rest of that interview at Field of 12's YouTube channel. Again, Yogi Roth, Christian Hackenberg, my man Clint Stoerner. We'll move on from Clemson. There'll be a ton to talk about over the next 2 weeks. I am very intrigued, though, to see where they sit, because to me, this is a great case of what we talked about earlier. Historicals, put him in the top 4. Reality, put him in the top 12. I'd take Oregon over Clemson. Take SC over Clemson. Speaking on the Pac-12, we'll get to that in a minute. Let's stay in the Big 12, though, with Quinn Ewers. Texas is always a big story. I hope I'll be cheering for Sark in Texas in 2 weeks for sure against TCU. They get a big one this weekend. Quinn Ewers, he's taken a lot of flack. That kind of comes with the position. I remember talking to Sam Ellinger back in the day. He was part of the book that Hack, you were gracefully a part of as well. I did 5-star QBs. Talked about, he's having the most fun in his career in the NFL, right? Because college can be hard when you're at a Penn State or you're at a Texas and things aren't always perfect or what people want them to be when you base historicals. Quinn Ewers may be dealing with that for the first time. What do you have? 30 incompletions, which was a season high in college football this year. Hack, for you, a guy who's played under that type of microscope, what are your thoughts? Is it being overblown? Where do you think Texas nets out here?
Yeah, I mean, I think everything, to your point, Yog, everything's obviously going to be overanalyzed, and the microscope's always going to dig deeper and deeper into these types of things, especially with how we as fans and as a culture, obsess over analytics and numbers and statistics. I think when you watch it, having played the position and watched what's going on out there, and I think, Clint, you might echo this based upon what we talked about, I don't think it was as bad as the numbers looked. And I think at the end of the day, the expectations for a guy like Quinn Ewers heading into Texas, and I said this at the beginning of the year when everyone was kind of like, I don't know about the kid. I said, I think the kid's going to be fine. At the end of the day, I think he's going to put himself in a really good situation to be the guy for the next couple of years, and then Arch Manning kind of follow in. I don't think that the game necessarily and the numbers matched up with how he played. I think there were some things that he obviously could have done better, but at the end of the day, I think it was a good learning game for him. And, I think the thing we got to pay attention to is how he comes out this week. And that's going to tell a lot about his makeup. It's going to tell a lot about Sark's confidence in him. And it's going to tell a lot about the team's confidence in him.
Clint, what'd you see when you watched it?
Yeah, I agree. Look, I don't think the numbers tell the story. I mean, this team had a major issue with penalties. They had 14 penalties. Oklahoma State, what I'm reading, had 0 penalties. I don't know how the hell that happened, but that was a major issue. He started the game with an interception, a bad interception. You got to give that one to him. The next one was late in the ball game. They had a 4th and like 2 or 3 and got a false start and got into 4th and 8. And he throws a pick. And then he threw a pick the very end of the game. There was a lot of really good football, I think, played in between there. This was a shootout versus. I'm sitting there watching the game, guys, and I'm thinking, damn, whoever gets stopped first is going to be behind the 8 ball. It was one of those one of those kind of football games. And I just think when it all boils down to it, if I got to really give you an opinion of Quinn Ewers, is very, very talented dude that's supposed to be a true freshman in college ultimately. You know, that's super young, that hasn't, I think, what's he got, 3 starts before this ball game, and he's playing on the road at a top 10 opponent. Not making excuses for the kid, because there were opportunities to get that ball game back to tied or even a lead late in the ball game and didn't get it done. But I still watch this kid play, take all things into consideration, and I see a guy that naturally knows how to layer the football. He naturally knows how to anticipate. He naturally, without even, like, it's not forced, man. He's accurate. He knows when to drive it. He knows when to throw that level 2. When he throws a deep ball, he throws as good a deep ball as anybody in the country right now. I mean, he's dropping dimes left and right on the deep ball. Now he's got some pretty good targets out there, but he throws the deep ball really, really well. So I still watch a kid that's got a ton of promise that I'm not one bit disappointed in. And I think the future is bright at the University of Texas.
Yeah. And I think for anybody that thinks that, like, the pressure of an incoming recruit, last name Manning, is affecting him, I think that's, like, so overblown. I think that's like, like, to play,
He's
like,
not even thinking
you don't
about
give
that.
a shit about. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So chill out on the message boards or on social media in that regard.
Yeah.
Like, support the player. To your point, like, should be a freshman in high school. A quick story on him. I remember when he came to the Elite 11, he went viral like a couple weeks before for that wild throw that he made at Steve Clarkson's quarterback camp. And he wasn't even a social media guy. And I remember talking to him, and he was like, I didn't like seek that attention out. Like, it just kind of happened, you know, like, and I think the players that we all talk to, like, nobody's raising their hand necessarily that's a baller that's like, hey, come look at me, I'm the man. They're just playing. And I think for him, like, to your point on the number of starts, he's got to keep playing. Like, he's a guy, can't wait till he gets to, like, let's just say 12 starts in his career, let alone like 15, 16, 18, because he will be an absolute, as our friend George Whitfield would say, like, he'll be an absolute surgeon. Like, he will be able to dice people up in this system at Texas. They're heading in the right direction. Speaking of heading in the right direction, Pac-12, which is kind of trending up out here, fellas. Before I get on my soapbox around this league, I want to know your takeaways. Like, where you sit, literally, in your respective states and different regions in the country. What's your view on the league right now? Go ahead, Clint.
Look, I think the fact that they've beat each other up and now you don't have an undefeated football team, I think, is a problem for the Pac-12. In terms of, you know, now TCU is the undefeated team that's not in the ACC, Big Ten, or SEC, that everybody's like, will they make it or will they not make it? So now we got to start talking about one-loss football teams. But I think if you watch the product that is, historically, you're going to have to tell me, yo, because I'm not a Pac-12 historian, but I think top to bottom, I watched Utah take down USC in an unbelievable matchup. I didn't get to see as much of the Oregon-UCLA game as I want, but big shout out to Bo Nix, who I doubted severely throughout the transfer and after the first week of the season. And he goes out there and throws for 5 touchdowns. And I watched all of those. He lit it up. You know, I think the football top to bottom, in my opinion, is significantly better than I recall it being. And this is after the Washingtons and Washington States, and I'm talking about kind of when the cream is coming to the top here as we get into the season. You look at USC and you look at Oregon. I don't know that either one of those guys aren't going to win the one-loss battle if the college football playoffs come down to a one-loss football team getting in. I think Oregon and USC potentially could be the front runners in that particular conversation, whoever emerges with one loss.
What do you think?
Yeah, I just think the Pac-12 has been so kind of distant for the past few years in terms of national stage. They haven't had, I mean, hell, you got to go back to like Mariota with Chip. Like they were on ESPN every day. Like they had highlights. They were putting up 65 points, 55 plus points every week. They haven't really had that. in terms of dominance over the past few years. I think that this year's group is deeper. To your point, I think Utah's a really, really good football team. I think you could insert Utah in a couple conferences and their game travels. I think Oregon's game travels right now. I think USC's game travels right now. So when you're talking about that, I think all these programs are headed in the right direction. I just don't think, like, at least we on the East Coast don't get to see it as much. It's not as front and center for us. And unless you're doing it in a very like dramatic fashion, we're not gonna really, until it comes down to nut cutting time. We're like, oh shit, dude, Oregon just ran the damn table and their only loss is to Georgia. Must be doing pretty good. Let's go look at that, because we don't get to catch those games too often. But for me, just looking at it, I think that there are some teams that definitely do travel this year more so than in the past few years.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I think it's fascinating, right? Like, can't argue the run that Oregon had when Marcus won the Heisman. UW won, I think, 3 straight titles, went to the playoff, lost to Bama. And then you had like SC had a moment, and they beat Penn State in the Rose Bowl, and you're thinking it's back, right? And Ohio State, Oregon last year, that was like a moment. But you're right, like there hasn't been like this continuous climb, right? And it's been 2 losses, somebody's out, because to Clint's point, they beating each other up.
And it's a shame too, though, Yogs, because like you were a part of it. Like that run that USC had was so, I mean, it was so epic. And like that, it was just like, that was kind of the expectation that they set, right? Like, to me, at least, like that was the expectation they set. So when that kind of disseminated, it was like, like
one of the greatest runs in the history of college football. Like, that was, I think, 7 straight top 4 finishes. Yeah. Like, it was just, and it was right when like College Game Day went, and the 4 or 5 o'clock game on ABC became a thing. And, it was LA, which is stupidly, and I'll say this.
They were poised to be Bama. Like, they were poised to be Bama. Like, what Nick Saban's done in Alabama is what.
Totally. And I think it was more impressive in LA because it was in LA than doing it in the middle of nowhere. No offense to our friends and listeners in Tuscaloosa. With that said, I love what you said about the talent coming in, because for the last like 10 drafts, Pac-12 predominantly sits 3rd, SEC, Big Ten, Pac-12. I don't think people necessarily know that, right? I think it's like, oh, there's not a lot of talent there. But then you look at like 1st round, 2nd round, 3rd round draft, and guys are still going to the NFL. Talent hasn't been a thing. It's just been a perception thing. And now with the 7 new quarterbacks from last year to this year via the portal, of course, Caleb Williams, Bo Nix, like at big schools, you look at the league, 10 of the 12 starters out of the 12 teams in the league didn't start their college careers at that school. Stanford and UCLA are the lone 2. Tanner McKee and Dorian Thompson-Robinson. So I think like the star power, if you will, and then the new coaches and the energy that comes with that, like you get the tailspin or the tailspin of Lanning in Georgia. Obviously, Lincoln is a rock star in his own right. Kalen DeBoer had success at Fresno. They get an early win in the season. Like, all of a sudden, eyes are shifting there. And to me, it's one of those things, to your point, like, I think the greater college football world, call it like game day or whatever, like I think they kind of want the Pac-12 to be good. So now it's like we're talking about it. And I love that, because I think the talent has been there, and now it's been backed up. And to Clint's point of cream rising to the top, there's 4 teams, right, in this league. I think 4 teams will be ranked in the top 15 in the initial poll. Chance to get 5 or 6 in the top 25. We'll see how that shakes out. And that is, to me, I think, where the league sits. The fun part was where does the committee evaluate that first game, which you can't ignore. It's part of the resume. It's part of the historic. It's part of whatever. And where do they evaluate it at the end of the season when you got to play 9 conference games? Like, look at the run Oregon has. They have to go this week. They go to Cal, which they should get. And then they'll win their next one. And then they get UW at home, Utah at home, and go to rivalry against Oregon State. Like, nobody in the top 15 in the AP poll or the CFP poll will have any type of schedule like that. And that's what I wonder about what the committee will do. That's why I think it's so vital to see what happens Tuesday. Like, where do they see not only Oregon, where do they see the league? And that could be one of those moments where maybe they see it as a little stronger than even the AP poll sees it. Like, I look at Oregon State. You guys know how I feel about them. I've talked about it before. Their 2 losses are SC on the last play of the game. Very next week had to go to Utah, and they move the ball up and down the field. I wonder if the committee looks at them and says, bowl eligible, 6-2, number 24. Like, I think those are the little things that are going to impact the argument and the conversation as we keep netting up towards the final playoff conversation. So there it is. I got a lot of stats, but I don't want to bore you with that. Anyway, Pac-12 has 5 bowl eligible teams, which I think is pretty cool at this stage. Only the SEC and the Big Ten have 5 currently, and everybody's they have 2 more teams, so it's pretty good. It is a big year for the Pac in that regard. All right, Texas A&M, some news. Brian Harsin has some news just broke that I haven't seen. What do we got going on?
Yeah, I'm confirming it here, but it looks like there's a report that Coach Harsin, several reports now that Coach Harsin is reportedly not letting players choose to redshirt. He's either telling them you're going to play or you're going to enter the transfer portal. Is apparently
at Auburn.
Yes, yeah, at Auburn.
All right, so let's start there. We talked about this last time. I don't know if Clint, you were on that or not. What do we think about that? Like, you sign up to play.
Which part of it?
About, like, should you, if a kid goes into the coach's office and says, hey, coach, I know I've been playing on kickoff return and 3 of the special teams, whatever. I want to sit it out because I played my 4 games. Do you think the coach should say, okay, cool? Or should the coach say, hey, we need you to win games. Like, you're part of this team, which I'd imagine is the dialogue from reading between the lines of what you just told me.
Yeah, look, no, I mean, I think it depends on the relationship that the coach has with that particular player. I think it depends on the respect level that the team and the players have for that particular coach, and their relationship. But ultimately, the days of the coach saying, hey, you're going to play or you're going to get the hell out of here, I mean, those days are over. I mean, because the kids can get out of here and not be penalized any longer. And the coach, like this report, I'm sure it's going to be one more report out of Auburn that, oh, there's no truth to it. It didn't happen. This isn't exactly how it went down. I'm sure it's going to be one of those. When you have dysfunction within the walls of a program, stuff like this happens. And it may or may not be true. But ultimately, who ends up losing is the program. The program ends up getting set back significantly. That used to, the coach that was a jackass could last a couple of years longer and just not recruit, right? Play golf instead of recruit. And he could run the program in the ground that way, right? Now, if these ADs and these programs don't start responding with a sense of urgency, a coach can run a program in the ground in 6 months. Like, you could lose 15 players. At a place like Auburn, you could lose 15 really good players. Half of them may be starting now. Half of them may be guys that you recruited last year that think they should be playing. They can bounce on you. So, look, I just think that now more than ever, you've got to have a coach in there that has the respect and has the relationship to weather the storm and weather adversity and keep players in the boat with them, versus ruling the roost with an iron fist. That ain't gonna cut it.
Yeah, I totally feel you. It's a different game, and you could drive a program into the ground one year and build it back up the next, right? Same argument, right? With the portal, you could light it up in NIL, and we got a sweet.
Be a hell of a life to live.
Yeah, no one wants to sign up for that. But what I'm really I think what's a fun conversation, right, is we've seen it. Like, a player probably on every team in Power 5 football has gone to the coach at some point at this point in the season and said, hey, coach, I played last year, but I want to burn my red shirt. I'm probably thinking about transferring. Can I just not play? I played my 4 games. Coaches to that one player, probably like, yeah, dude, totally. I get it. No break, no biggie. Like, I understand the world that we're in, no problem. Now, I don't know the report, and we're not there. But if it ends up becoming like 6, 8, 12, 15, like, you got to feel the team. Like, I wonder if a coach is like, whoa, guys, like, this isn't, we're playing, we're competing, like, you're on the team. And that, to me, again, not knowing what the details are in the report other than what you said, heck, I just wonder, like, that is to me the point where the coach needs to be like, whoa, dude.
Well, that's the other thing too, Yogi, is like that's why I hate reports like this. And honestly, I know we gotta talk about them, but we don't know the full picture. We don't know exactly what's going on, right? Because I think to your point, you can make the argument for both sides. I think Clint made a great argument for one side, and you made a great argument for the other side. You can make an argument for everybody being right here. At the end of the day, you need to see what's going on. And you know me, Yogi, I'm old school, man. Like, I think there's a couple kids probably in each class that a coach will sit there and go, you know what? Yeah. We got plans for you. We'd love you to be here for another year. You're obviously a special teams guy here, but next year we see you doing this, this, and this. But the vast majority of those kids that are in that situation, like, just go play while you got it. Like, I don't know what to say. Like, if a coach sees you playing on the field, like, go make a difference and make an impact. And because at the end of the day, you got to earn everything that you get at that level. Transfer portal kind of makes it easier for you to get in and out. But, I don't know. I see what you're saying with the coach. Like, a place like Auburn right now, you got to find people who want to play. And who want to don those colors on Saturdays. And if you're having problems with people wanting to wear that jersey and make a difference on the field, then and that's your scapegoat. There's bigger problems, I think, than that. That poison runs deeper than the locker room.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about the locker room. We'll touch upon that. I'm sure Phil 12 will talk about that tomorrow as more news comes up, if it does. Texas A&M. I got to be honest, I don't think I've ever read an article like this in college football, right? 3 players in the middle of a losing streak, all freshmen, violated team rules. My understanding, tell me if I'm off on this, was that they were doing something in the locker room pregame, right? We on the same page?
Word on the street is down. I'll say it. Hell, Yogi. Word on the street is down here in Houston. They were smoking dope in the damn locker room before the game.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing by the look on your face, that's what you heard as well.
Yeah, I'm looking at ESPN.com and like it's not saying those words, which I'm sure they're very specifically not saying certain things like that. But yeah, you go on social media and that's what it seemingly has come up. That's amazing to me. Like, how many locker rooms have every player on that team been in their athletic lives? I mean, there's certain things you just can't do in a locker room, in a classroom. And I don't get, you can't do them.
Yeah.
My mind was blown when I saw that. What do we think? Do we think like, what in what world do you think that's okay?
I'll tell you where. Jimbo Fisher, College Station, Texas A&M, right? I mean, look, man, look, just look at their receiver room, their wide receiver room over the last handful of years since Jimbo Fisher's been there. Demas was a receiver that was a 5-star, that was a 6'5", 6'6", could stand flat-footed and do a backflip, was an absolute monster. He goes up there, gets in trouble with the law 2 times, boom, he ends up getting transferred out of there. Say what you want about Anaya Smith this past offseason, the night before leaving to go to SEC Media Days, gets pulled over with a gun and weed and whatever in his car as a team captain, right? That ended up getting dismissed, but let's be honest, that's another wide receiver. And now you look at it before the Miami game, you got Evan Stewart, a freshman, and the Marshall kid, a freshman, along with the Harris kid that's a freshman defensive back. But I'm talking wide receivers right now. Those 2 freshmen both get they have to sit out the Miami game before they play number 13 in the country after the App State loss at the time, right? And now you fast forward 3 weeks later, and you've got one of the receivers, Marshall, one of the same kids that's already been suspended once this season. Not only is he getting suspended and having to miss another game, reports are speculation that they were literally smoking dope in the locker room before a game. Now, that's one position group now. That's one position group. And about the Demas thing was a year and a half ago. So that's a little bit removed. But when it's all said and done, man, anybody on the inside up there at A&M, I mean, Jimbo Fisher is you either coaching it or you're allowing it. And right now he is in a position where these kids are doing whatever the hell they want to do, whenever they want to do it. And this, I'm with you, Yogi. This is the damnedest thing I've ever heard. If reports are true that was going on in the locker room before a ball game, who gives a damn if you went out there and got your ass whooped by South Carolina? But it's happening in a locker room before a ball game. Jimbo Fisher has lost all control of that program, And again, another one of those organizations, another one of them programs that all in 5 stars in that record-setting recruiting class last year. Whew. It ain't like the old days, Jimbo. Them boys can bounce in a hurry now.
Hack, 30 seconds. Go.
Yeah, listen, I think Clint said it. To me, it starts at the top. You can't say much about it. It starts at the top. That stuff wouldn't fly in a Nick Saban locker room. That stuff wouldn't fly in a Dabo Swinney locker room. And that's what Jimbo's been tasked with becoming, and he hasn't gotten there. And there's a lot of angry A&M folk who are gonna be forking some money up to get his buyout paid at the end of the year.
Yeah, there's not a lot of high school locker rooms that would happen, and accountability, I think, is a phrase that sometimes we forget about in college athletics. But as we started, we will go right to where we began. We still love this game. Remember the great moments amid all the news that will be in your Twitter feed over the next 24 hours. Thanks for the time. Thanks for listening. Check it out on the SiriusXM app. For the crew, Clint, Hack,